Well, that's what's really fascinating to me is that I read a New York Times article about, I think there was a composer who was Jewish and he was conducting music by Richard Wagner. And obviously,
Oh,
Wagner
sin,
is,
sin.
well, you know what he said? This was really amazing. He said, Wagner never composed one racist note of music.
Yeah, yeah,
Then that's the thing about art. It doesn't. I always thought that great art doesn't matter as long as the art is great. It can apply to anybody.
yeah.
That's what I always
Look,
thought.
and I've said a similar thing. Suppose in some archive in Vienna, where I believe Hitler studied painting or whatnot, it turned out that Hitler wasn't only a mediocre painter, and he wasn't a terrible painter like people said. If you want, he was certainly a competent painter. But let's say he also wrote some poems, and Hitler was too fucked up to realize he had more talent in poetry. Both Stalin and Mao wrote poetry, but they were not good poets. But let's say Hitler was maybe not Rilke great, but let's say he was at the level of a good, solid, competent poet like oh God, what's his name? The guy, uh, Mark Van Doren. Mark Van Doren is one of the most solid, excellent poets you're going to find. But he never really wrote anything that is unadulteratedly great. Maybe one or two things you could argue were great, but his poems were consistently good. Let's say Hitler was a consistently good poet. Does this mean that if I say, you know, Hitler in his rediscovered folio of 83 sonnets was actually a pretty good poet? You're a fucking Jew hater, Dan. Where do you get that? Where do you get that? Because they are two absolutely separate domains. Because I say Rilke was a great poet doesn't mean that I support the fact that he was a lousy father and an unfaithful spouse. Because I say that Einstein came up with great physical equations does not mean that I support the fact that he was again a bad father and a terrible husband. Um, these but people people have to put in boxes and they don't think well. And this is what great art can do: is it's not going to make every idiot that says things like that intelligent, but you might get one or two out of 500 people and switch them. And to me, that's that's worth it.
Well, one of the other fallacies that I see where bad people defend, or it's not bad people, but like I should say, people defend bad art is they say stuff like, "Oh, it's not made for you." I'm sure you've heard that before, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, because you know, if I read Maya Angelou's Doggerel and I'm not a black woman, I just don't get it. No, I get it because the common currency, if we remove Maya Angelou's name and we just look at the words on the page, it's Doggerel. It's fucking Hallmark card level writing. And that's not going to change if instead of Maya Angelou, it's Saul Rabinowitz, and he's a Jewish janitor who wrote those poems. It's not going to change if it's, you know, Molly Fleener from fucking Dublin who wrote that. It's not going to change if it's Wang Fu Wang from some Chinese province who wrote that. It's still Doggerel because ultimately it has to stand by itself. When I'm dead and this flesh sack of 170 pounds of flesh, blood, and shit that goes around with the moniker Dan Schneider is long gone, only the words are going to remain. And people in 10,000 years who look at it, they're not going to give a flying fuck that oh, was Dan molested or not? Was Dan a Republican or a Democrat? There's not going to be Republicans or Democrats. Was Dan this, that, or the other thing? Who gives a fuck? The only thing that's going to matter about Dan Schneider is the words.